more than 90 years, St. Cloud State Hockey has had a home in the Granite City. Boasting two Hockey Hall of Famers in Frank Brimsek and the late Herb Brooks, many players and coaches have made their mark on St. Cloud State hockey lore. With former St. Cloud State greats like Mark Parrish and Bret Hedican, to more recent standouts like Jack Ashon and Jimmy Schultz, two Patty Kazmaier Award finalists, and 16 Division I All-Americans have paved the way for current St. Cloud State men's and women's teams to continue the Huskies hockey tradition. This week's guest is one of many who have made their mark on St. Cloud State hockey history as the Huskies Warming House podcast presents this week's Healthy Scratch interview segment.
And welcome to the Healthy Scratch interview segment on this week's Huskies Warming House podcast. And joining us is former NHL defenseman, former St. Cloud State defenseman, Bret Hedican, who's now a current broadcaster for the San Jose Sharks. Bret, thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Always good to talk to some St. Cloud boys.
It always is. And, it's not just St. Cloud. Their season's going great, but you got an opening night tonight down in San Jose, taking on Arizona. So, again, still involved in the game of hockey and excited to get the season going, I imagine, aren't you?
Yeah, I think everybody was last night to see the NHL kind of kick off. And then, obviously, the Shark season starts tonight. Oddly enough, the San Jose Sharks are not in San Jose. They are in Arizona. So because of Santa Clara County, where the Sharks stadium is, has basically shut down. And that's what we saw with the San Francisco 49ers, how they had to play the rest of their season from Arizona. Well, the Sharks have kind of followed that same blueprint, if you will, and will start the season tonight in Arizona on the road. Obviously, the first, 8 of 10 games is on the road for the Sharks. But either way, home and away games will all be done from Arizona and then wherever the team is they're playing on the road.
You're no stranger to travel. You mentioned to us pre-show that you had just traveled back from Minnesota a little while ago. North St. Paul native. Let's kind of go back and kick the calendar back a little bit to the mid-1980s. How did you kind of end up at St. Cloud State? You end up finishing your career as a Husky from 1988 to 91, all WCHA first team, the first St. Cloud State player to ever earn that honor. Record for most points for a defenseman in a single season with 48. But what brought you to end up becoming a Husky? Did you have a lot of college offers? Was there some scholarship things involved? What brought you a little bit more north of northern St. Paul?
Well, my senior year, I really things came together for me. I didn't play a lot as a junior, of all things, in high school, and even as a freshman, I didn't play a lot on the varsity either. So, I was really looking at my senior year as an opportunity to definitely get an opportunity to play college hockey. I think my main goal was to be an Olympian someday. And in order to be an Olympian, I thought the best way to do that is to go to college and to have a chance to play in college somewhere. So, for me, when St. Cloud gave me a call and said, hey, they're looking at me, and I had a couple other universities looking at me, but St. Cloud was the only university that offered me a partial scholarship. And I say partial because I know the year that I came in, they recruited 10 freshmen that year, 3 Canadian defensemen, and I was a defenseman my whole career, and they didn't recruit me as a defenseman. They actually recruited me as a forward. So, but regardless of that, I took the opportunity and ran with it, and obviously accepted the offer from St. Cloud. To be honest with you, I really wanted to go to Duluth, and that was one of the universities that I really wanted to go to, and unfortunately that didn't work out. But that's when St. Cloud stepped in and offered me the scholarship, took it, ran with it. And the rest is, I wouldn't say history. It's just the rest is a dream come true. I mean, to get that opportunity to play for St. Cloud.
Yeah, 78 points in 105 games played as a defenseman, not too shabby. Your sophomore year was kind of your big break, but I want to go back. You mentioned a really key piece that I was just about to touch on. You're a defenseman that, especially for the era in which you played, not a lot of defensemen were known for their speed game. Coaches, I guess, probably at the high school and collegiate level wanted to turn you into a forward. Had a couple of cousins that played at Michigan State that you kind of emulated growing up with that power skating. Why was there not really ever a feel for a forward? Did you ever think you could be a forward? And what really made your game so successful in terms of the speed aspect?
I asked my parents, could they see my skating ability as a kid? And they always would, now that I've been beyond the game. When I've asked them that question, they said, yeah, we never wanted to tell you that you're a great skater or, you're a good hockey player. But, watching you as a kid growing up, they always said I was really competitive. And being a short guy on my team, I was typically the smallest guy on my team until I finally grew. As a junior in high school, I grew 7 inches, and then things changed quite a bit when you go from, 5'6" to 6'2" in a matter of a year. But, I tried to play forward. Even in high school, they tried to move me to forward. And, I always say, even watching, I have 2 daughters now, and I've coached them in soccer. And one of the things that I realized when watching athletes play, it's either you have the forward gene or you have the defenseman gene. And I just was born with that defenseman gene. I love to have the play in front of me. I love to be able to shut other players down. Probably as much as, as fun as it is scoring goals, I actually enjoyed, taking one-on-one against the best players in the game. And that's where that competitive fire, I think my parents saw at a young age, saw in me. But all that being said, it felt like home when I was a defenseman, and that's where I always wanted to play.
Brett, the WCHA conference, as we knew it back in the day, you were playing it, some pretty prominent teams back then and there. Well, as a defenseman, what kind of talent did you happen to go up against? And as far as, back in that era too, I guess, was there a team or a player that you remember being kind of nice? Is that's a guy that I really want to go after, or is this a guy I really want to challenge? Do you remember anything specific about your playing times against some familiar WCHA opponents?
Well, interestingly enough, probably, I think it was our freshman year, we had Bowling Green, and we had them in the, when we were the 12th seed of the, or actually, no, anyway, we played Bowling Green, and you guys will have to tell me when we played Bowling Green. Was it my freshman year or my sophomore year? But Rob Blake was a player that I remember playing against and saying, gosh, that was you could just tell there was a guy who was going to play in the National Hockey League. And then Nelson Emerson was his teammate. I actually became teammates with him in St. Louis my very first couple of years there. So, but he's the one guy that really comes to mind. As a freshman, I was actually moved to a forward position, as I mentioned. And so after that season, I really went into the coach's office and said to Craig Dahl, I said, listen, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you recruiting me. But I'm not a forward. I said, I really believe in myself as a defenseman. Give me a shot to come back and be a defenseman here next year. And basically, I think he thought he'd cut me coming back the next year. But I guess, again, gave me the opportunity a sophomore year, and things kind of started to come together, and then it really took off my junior year. But all that being said is thinking about being forward, playing defense, seeing a guy like Rob Blake, knowing what the level would have to be if I wanted to continue to play at the WCHA level.
Glad you mentioned St. Louis too. 1988 NHL draft, 198th overall to the Blues. One of a handful of teams you played for in your career. But interestingly enough, I believe actually you went to the 1992 Olympic tournament before you actually played a game in the National Hockey League. And this Olympic tournament was important, I would say, to you for a couple of reasons. Not only because of the hockey, but because of a future familial aspect. Can you kind of take us through both the tournament itself and then what significant moment in your life kind of started there at the 92 Olympics?
Well, there was a couple of things. I mean, after my junior year in college, when I had a really good season, I was on spring break down in Florida with a bunch of my teammates, and ended up getting a call from my parents, who had gotten a call from the national team saying, hey, they want you to fly home tomorrow, fly to Russia with USA Hockey and represent the United States in this tournament called the Pravda Cup. And I knew that this was an opportunity of a lifetime, and played 4 of the best games of my life. After that tournament, I didn't realize the coaches of that team were the coaches of the next Olympic team. Dave Peterson was the coach, and gave me or at least asked me to try out that summer, made the national team. So I left school my senior year, not even knowing if I'd make that Olympic team. And eventually, right before the Olympic Games, they kind of put a sheet of paper, on the wall saying, hey, you're either going to France or here's a plane ticket to New York to go home. I was on that roster to represent the USA in the Olympic Games in 1992, and a dream come true. So that was a really surreal moment. But yeah, at the opening ceremonies, met my wife eventually there. But I think ultimately, when you think back of her dream of becoming an Olympian and then winning her gold in the 92 Olympics and all the work that went in to get there, I think that was what we had in common, is just that work ethic and that commitment it takes to become an Olympian, first of all, and then obviously to, for her to win a gold, and then for me just to try to perform at a high level and then eventually play pro after. But that was all set up from a dream when I was 10. So really fun to see it come to fruition.
Also went to the Olympics in 2006 as well. But I know before I told my mom that actually we were going to have you on the show. She's like, you got to ask about Kristi Yamaguchi. You got to ask. So the one funny tidbit that I did find, though, is I guess out of the two of you, who would you say is the better skater? And the reason I ask is because if you go on YouTube to BuzzFeed Multiplayer, there's a video titled NHL Player Tries Olympic Figure Skating happening to involve you. Can you take our listeners through that and kind of how that whole soiree went?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to make excuses, but those skates that I had on, they're figure skates, obviously. They're not hockey skates. And they were literally the ones at the rink that you rent from behind that probably haven't been sharpened in 10 years. They've got pads on the inside. My feet hurt for 2 weeks after that clip we taped. But without question, I am the third best skater in my house. We've got Kristi number one, obviously. My daughter Emma number two. My oldest daughter doesn't skate too much, a little bit. So I would rank her maybe just below me. So I'm about third in my family. So there's no question my wife is number one, though.
Going back to 2006, Bret, it was also another big year for you. I think every hockey player's dream, but you found yourself on the Carolina Hurricanes, ended up hoisting a Stanley Cup. I guess as a player, I think it's something you dream about. It's something that, as you mentioned, you work hard, you sacrifice a lot, and you finally get to lift the best trophy in all of sports. Talk us through what that was like to raise the Stanley Cup and what that moment was like on the ice as you're watching the clock counting down, knowing that you're about to win the best trophy in all of sports.
Well, it's a big journey. It's a long journey to get to that point, right? It's that moment in time in Game 7 against the Oilers. We were in Carolina. We were the home team, with an opportunity to win that game with a minute to go, right? We're up 2-1. Rod Brind'Amour is out there. Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7. Eric Stahl, you guys know him, was for the Wild. Obviously, just moved to Buffalo. But then myself and Mike Commodore on the ice as well to ice the game with that minute to go. For us to execute that face-off and knocked it down out of the air, I gave it to Stahly, and Stahl gave it to Williams, and he goes down and ices the game, puts it in the empty net. We win 3-1. I think that moment in time, you kind of hit the reverse button and you think back of all the chances and the times that you were facing adversity, the times you doubted yourself, the times that you didn't know if you could continue on. I'll be honest with you. There in an NHL season, particularly when you're younger, when you're learning how to deal with the ups and downs of being a pro athlete, the ups and downs of making a mistake, maybe costing your team a goal, and maybe the potential of that goal cost the team the game. And then you got to sleep at night, and then you got to, you're hard on yourself younger in your career, and you don't have a lot of mental tools at that time to combat all the little things that it takes to continue to move up in the National Hockey League and to continue to be a consistent player night in, night out. So the culmination, I guess, to answer your question, to win in 2006 is a lot of people that helped you get there. It's, universities like St. Cloud for the opportunity to get you to the NHL, sports psychologists, it's trainers, it's your parents, it's the calls to your mom and dad on nights that you've had a tough night and they pick you up. All those things kind of come together. And when that moment you win and Rod Brind'Amour gets the cup and he gives it to Glenn Wesley, 20 years in the National Hockey League, never won a cup. And Glenn turns and yells my name, "Hey, Hetty," and gives me the cup. I mean, it's a pretty amazing feeling when you raise the cup over your head. And I can remember saying to myself at that moment, is like, holy cow, I was right. I was right not to give up. I was right to continue to look at myself and find ways of getting better. I was right to pick my teammates up as much as I could. All those things that flood your mind are the things that you learned through the journey is what you think about that moment when you raise it. So it's a great feeling to be a cup champion, but I think more importantly, what really is meaningful to me is to be able to play on teams like that shows you what teamwork can do.
I've got a couple of follow-up questions to that. Interestingly enough, the team that actually won the opening draw in every game of that series ended up winning the hockey game. So it's one of the few NHL series that has that statistic. And I do have a couple follow-up questions about that, but I want to go back to a moment in time when you talk about not giving up and feeling like you might not ever kind of climb that mountain, if you will. I believe from 1992 to 94, you're with the St. Louis Blues, but then you're traded to Vancouver and go on that magnificent cup run only to lose to the New York Rangers. At that point in your career, I know we hear a lot of NHL guys talk about it, but did you almost have that feeling that you wonder, will I ever actually be back here in a Stanley Cup final? What did that final that kind of got away from you mean to you as far as that development to get there 8 years later?
Well, that was a great moment for me because I came from St. Louis where things weren't kind of happening for me my first couple of years in the NHL. Tore my MCL and kind of had to build my leg back up to get to the point where I was skating the way I could. It never really kind of came together for me. So when I got traded to Vancouver, Pat Quinn, who now has since passed away, just really took me under his wing, taught me and calmed me down on the defensive side of the game, which I really appreciate even to this day. I think he had a lot, and it was a big reason why I had the NHL career I did, is because a guy like him picked me up when I absolutely needed it. But that run in particular showed me for the first time what winning looks like from the inside, what a winning attitude looks like, what commitment and accountability looks like. All those things that when you see it in real time with your own eyes, it's what I always say, that you can't unknow now. You can't unknow all those things that you've seen in those winning environments. So when we lost, I guess to answer your question, I would say that I didn't think at that moment that I would never get another shot at it. But as years go by and you don't get back to that moment again, or you don't even get to a conference final again for a long time, you start to wonder. But those are the moments that I feel, when we talk about when you raise the cup, that those are the moments that you say, gosh, I was right to just keep going and keep having the right attitude about the way I went about my life, about trying to look at myself to get better every season, no matter, get stronger, get better, watch more film, work sports psychology, work on all the aspects of my game personally. Because I think when you continue to strive to get better as an individual, no matter what it is, no matter how big of a mountain you have to climb, if you just keep putting one foot in front of another, you eventually track down a large part of that mountain. You don't even know it until you get there. And so that was the first time I realized what winning looked like, and was always hoping to get back to that moment again.
Long journey, led the league in shorthanded assists in the 97-98 season. A big part of that trade, that Pavel Bure trade with Ed Jovanovski in 99 in Florida, traded to Carolina. And then, of course, on that infamous team, like we mentioned, Martin Gerber in net to start the season and Cam Ward as a rookie, getting it done. Also, don't forget former Husky Matt Cullen on that roster as well. But I really want to talk about August 12th of 2006, dubbed Bret Hedican Day in North St. Paul, presentation of the Stanley Cup, a parade, your high school retiring of your jersey at your high school. What did that day mean to you? Because as you just mentioned, the epitome, finally getting that moment to raise the cup. Then you have that waiting period before you come back in August. Was that moment almost even more special than the time where you were raising the cup after a Stanley Cup win?
I'd just say equally. I think it was, for me, the moment when you get the day with the cup, they give every player, obviously you guys know the story, I'm sure, but for the people listening that might not know the story, is I think back when the New Jersey Devils won it, was that in 2004, I believe, and maybe you guys can clarify that at a later date, but that's when they started to award the winning team a day with the cup, every player and every person within the organization. And so on my day, that was the day that they gave me the cup. And the one thing that came to mind is really I wanted to bring it back two places. One, North St. Paul, where I grew up playing. The first time I ever really saw the cup was the year before I won it. And it was Ben Clymer who had won it with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they always say, hey, stay away from the cup. Don't touch it. Don't get near it. If you've never won it, it's going to jinx you. Well, since 2000 up to 2004, it hadn't worked. I've never been near the cup, and I still haven't won the cup. So I was like, heck with this, man. I'm going to go to my friend's party and I'm going to go and look at the cup. I'm going to go spend some time with it and be around the cup. And I think it was the moment that really inspired me to refocus and to recommit myself to what I was playing for. An opportunity to maybe one day I would have a chance to get my name on the cup. And so that inspired me after I won, is to bring it back to North St. Paul, because I'm positive that many people from North St. Paul had never seen the cup before and never been around the Stanley Cup to see it within arm's length or even touch it and to see the names on the Stanley Cup. That was something that I really wanted to provide the town that gave me the ability to play the game of hockey. So bringing it back to North St. Paul was definitely something that was on the priority list. And then the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to take it to St. Cloud for the exact same reason, is to give it the opportunity for the players that might not have never seen the cup, for students, the university, and to obviously call Matt Cullen to have him bring the cup in with me into St. Cloud was something that I definitely wanted to do. So special day, to be honest with you. I wish I could do it over again, because I would make it last 48 hours and just try to spend as much time as I could with that cup, and then obviously give it back to those communities as well.
2004 was also when the NHL All-Star Game was here in St. Paul, was when I actually first was able to touch and not hoist the Stanley Cup, but to give it a nice one-handed hug, if you want to call it, there, as it sat inside the River Center. But Bret, like any good NHL careers, at some point they do come to an end. And now, Bret, you are in you could call it your second career as a broadcaster with the San Jose Sharks. I guess, was this sort of like an out of the blue opportunity, or what did the broadcasting sort of secondary career come at you? And you've been pretty successful down there in the Bay Area.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. When I retired, living in the Bay Area, I never played for the Sharks, but the Comcast, or NBC Bay Area, a week after I retired, they had called Christy and I to come in and do an interview. Hey, what are these two Bay Area athletes now doing now that they're both retired? And I think, potentially they might have been feeling me out to do the pre and post game on Comcast or NBC Bay Area to cover the Sharks. So a week later, I got a call after that interview saying, hey, would you be interested in doing pregame and postgame? And I'll be honest with you, the first time they called me to ask me that, I was like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with hockey. I want to get away from the game for a while. But Christy was actually the one to say, you know what? It might give you something to do a couple days a week to call the Sharks and at least do the pre and post game, and heck, get out of the house for a couple days a week. So that's kind of how it started. And, you either can do it or you can't. I think the first month or two, it's like a deer in the headlights a little bit. You're trying to get your sea legs, but they told me, hey, we think you can do this if you want to continue on. And that's kind of what led to doing some color on the radio for the Olympic Games in Sochi. I did that for NBC and Westwood One. And that's kind of how I swung into doing some play-by-play color. I did it with Randy Hahn and Drew Menda, who were the color and play-by-play guy for the Sharks. Once in a while, they'd throw me in as the third guy inside the glass for broadcasts. And that's kind of how it started. And since then, I've been doing it ever since. Like you said, I love being around the game. It's kind of what I know. It's been in my blood since back in North St. Paul, and here I am still around the game.
Yeah, well, if you ever feel like you don't want to get up anymore a couple days a week to go do the Sharks, we'd be happy to fill in for you, Bret. I promise.
I bet you would.
Finishing your career, also, don't forget, you're one of only just over 350 players to play 1,000 games in the National Hockey League. And I believe your 1,000th game was against the team that drafted you in St. Louis. But one moment that I really wanted to kind of touch on here, you're the only player, as you sit next to one of my shoulders here on the mural behind me, you're the only player to have your number retired by St. Cloud State, number 24, on November 6th of 2010. Can you kind of take Husky fans through that moment, how it kind of came about and what that moment meant for you?
Wow, it's pretty surreal. I mean, and just an honor, obviously, to be in the rafters at St. Cloud. I think the one thing I said when they retired my jersey is, opportunity is all you need in life. When I think back at the number 24, and I really want people to recognize that when they see the number 24, you have to think about is it's an opportunity. Okay, it's an opportunity because I actually got the number 24 by default. We were the last two guys in the locker room to pick our numbers. Most guys out of the 10 freshmen that came in, 8 of them, they asked for a number, they got it, right? And then there was just 2 other guys, me and Doc Del Castello, who we were the last guys to pick 2 numbers, one a 25 or number 24. And I basically, when I walked in there with Doc, I said, well, Doc, what number do you want? He said, I'll take 25. So the last number available was number 24. So by default, that was the number I got, and now it's in the rafters. And all I'll say is, it doesn't matter, what happens in your life. I think what matters is opportunities are going to present themselves. And I think when those opportunities are there for you, recognize them. And then number 2, make the most of it, because you never know what can happen. And I think if anything, that number should recognize and represent opportunity and making the most of opportunities in life, because, don't let anything get in your way. Don't let anybody or any one thing put you down or make you believe you can't do something, because I hope that number can actually tell people that they can.
Strong words from also a 2017 St. Cloud State Hall of Fame inductee as well. Brett, we know you're kind of strapped for time, so I only have one more question, then I'll kick it to my co-host here. Once again, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. I want to highlight a very important moment as far as putting yourself out there and not being afraid, and that's the 2019 Celebrity Family Feud. Can you kind of tell us about what that opportunity was like? Did you ever expect that you'd be on some sort of game show like that, or did those experiences kind of almost culminate into you feeling comfortable with that opportunity?
No, the Family Feud was just a great thing. My wife started a foundation, which will be 25 years ago this year, called alwaysdream.org, or it's Always Dream Foundation, but you can find us at alwaysdream.org. And we support early childhood literacy. And I feel when I talk about reading, and we read to our kids every night when they were younger, and now they're thriving in school, but not everybody has the opportunity to have books in their house like we had for our kids. And so we really want to teach parents and give kids in underserved areas opportunities to not only have books in their home, but also teach the parents on how to sit with their child and read. There's a lot of numbers that will qualify the fact that a kid will have success in school when their kids and their parents, are involved in their education. So we're extremely proud of that. And so doing the Family Feud, all that money would go to Christie's Foundation. So it's something that we really thought would be a great opportunity to raise some money if we did well. Obviously, that was always the kicker. We want to win the speed round, if you will. And I think obviously Christy and her brother did that, and we raised a lot of money. But speaking of education, one thing I want to slide in here is that just the other day, about a month ago, I just graduated from St. Cloud State. So I finally, chipped away after leaving my senior year and never going back to college. I had chipped away, went to University of California, Berkeley. I went to University of San Francisco, and then took some classes from St. Cloud and University of Phoenix. And eventually I've accumulated enough credits now to finally graduate. So not only is that number up there in the rafters, I'm now proud to say that guy that was wearing that number is a college graduate. So a really proud moment for me to be a St. Cloud State alumni.
Brett, last question for you. And again, thank you for joining us. I'm not your typical college student either. I'm 34. I spent 3 years at Iowa State and have certainly tried to chip and claw my way back through it. And, we'll have one more year after this before I call myself a graduate and an alumni of St. Cloud State. But Brett, going back to your days here on campus, you can see I'm actually here inside the KBST radio studios here on campus, even throughout this pandemic. But first of all, do you follow the Huskies hockey at all? And then 2, any message to the hockey team? And 3, to the Huskies faithful, I guess, from down there, the great old good state of California?
First of all, yes, I follow St. Cloud. I've been watching, them play well from the beginning of the year. And I've always followed St. Cloud, and something I keep track of. I'm very proud of the Huskies and very proud of my alma mater. Brett Larson and I have, become close, I think. I guess I would say is, he's called me in the summer. I actually spoke to the team this last summer. Brett Larson wanted me to do kind of a motivational speech to them. And, I was really honored for him, for him to ask me, first of all, and then secondly, to kind of meet the players and to give them a sense of another guy that's beyond where those guys are now. I was sitting in your shoes back in that day. And here I am on the other side of it, looking back at those moments as being really special. So for me, when I always think of St. Cloud State and my time there, it brings a smile to my face because there was so much to life that I was learning. There's so much to hockey that I was learning, and being on my own for the first time in my life, I think those are just really special moments. And if I could do anything again, and a lot of people, I don't have really any regrets, believe me, but I would love to do that again, is go back to college, repeat those years because they were so fun. And I just loved being a student athlete. So really exciting to watch Brett Larson, how he's pulled his team together, and really exciting to see the Huskies continue to climb in the national rankings here this year. It's been fun to watch.
Bret Hedican, former St. Cloud State defenseman, former National Hockey League and Stanley Cup winning defenseman, and of course, current broadcaster for CSN down there in the Bay Area with the San Jose Sharks. Bret, I know it's a game time for you. I know you got things to do, so thank you for taking the time to spend with us here on the Huskies Women House podcast, and maybe we'll have to have you back on again soon. Again, thanks for joining us.
Sounds good. Love to, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bret.
If you're looking for more Huskies Warming House podcast content, there's a place for that. Visit us at huskieswarminghousepodcast.com and follow our Twitter page @WarmingHouseDen for the latest news, notes, updates, prizes, and more. Don't forget you can find us on Podbean, Apple Podcast, TuneIn, Spotify, and more. We also are on Google Podcast and would love to hear your feedback on the show. Drop us a line at huskieswarminghousepodcast@outlook.com or leave us feedback in the feedback section of the Huskies Warming House podcast website. And finally, if you know any Huskies hockey alumni who would love to be on the show, let us know and we just might make it happen.
And thanks again to Bret Hedican for joining us in his very, very busy schedule, again, as a broadcaster for the San Jose Sharks down there with NBC Sports California. So really good to see, obviously talking with him in his hockey career, but also kind of that, just interesting story, again, with, what turned to be out to be an interview focusing on them that ended up turning into a career opportunity. I thought that was pretty cool. And, in this industry, I hate to say it, I think it's one of those, I guess those truths that, are not often said, is that, sometimes you just need one little foot in the door to get in and to showcase your talent. And sometimes you only have one. And for Bret, glad he was able to make an impression. And he does a pretty good job down there on the call there for the Sharks organization.
Yeah, he does. A very articulate guy. And I know people think, well, yeah, he's on national broadcast, but I mean, he's a very eloquent speaker. And I think he's a very motivational guy too, very positive. And I think that's the biggest thing I took away is, he's just one of those guests that, you feel better about life after the interview. And I thought, if someone can do that in only 30 minutes, imagine what he does over the course of a 3-hour broadcast to get people invested into the game of hockey. So, and as you mentioned, it is a cutthroat business in the media world. So congratulations to him. He's earned it with his NHL career. He's earned that opportunity and he's really taken it and ran with it. So we really appreciate him making time for us little guys in the media world. So with that, Nick, we do have, of course, some hockey games coming up this week for both the men's and women's hockey teams. Women's hockey team is back in action Friday and Saturday against Wisconsin, and men's hockey takes on Miami on those same days. So should be an interesting weekend for both squads. Of course, the women's team coming off of a win and a shootout loss against Bemidji State, and men's hockey really looking to regroup, reeling after a straight sweep by Western Michigan in Kalamazoo. But nonetheless, we'll have it all for you in episode number 46 on Sunday, Healthy Scratch interview on Tuesday, and we bid you adieu from the Huskies Warming House podcast.